The big question to me, the Davis trade and winning a title, which is the whole point of a trade, Russillo. You just want to win a title. The KG Celtics, they only won one title. Guess what? All of it was worth it. They were in the mix for a few years, and they won in 2008. That was the only one they won, but everything was worth it because that's the whole point. You win the title. If you're the Lakers, the point is to win the title. But when you actually look at the last 12 years and the amount of draft picks they used just to get LeBron and Davis and all the ones going to New Orleans, we're talking about a decade of assets that they gave up basically for this one bubble season title that, by the way, their fans didn't even get to enjoy it because there were no fans at the games. But this is all, going back from really that Nash Howard season, which how awful how disappointing that season was. Everybody's hurt. Kobe tears his Achilles right at the end of it. Dwight Howard leaves. The Nash trade doesn't work out. That's multiple picks plus Bynum. Then they hit rock bottom. They draft Randall. He breaks his leg immediately. They draft D'Angelo Russell. He doesn't really work out. They draft Ingram second. They get the second pick the following year. They take Lonzo over Tatum. They let Randall leave. They trade Russell away to open up cap space because they had blown it on $140 million of Mozgov and Dang. So you run through all these picks just to get LeBron. Now you have to make LeBron happy. You make this Davis trade, and these picks go on until 2025. And I guess my question for you is, they won the title. I feel like it was all worth it, but it's weird to say, like, you basically have had one good season out of the last 10, and the next 5 are looking probably not awesome. So was it worth it?
So it's Ingram, it's Lonzo, it's Hart in a move that moves some picks around there. It's the pick that was DeAndre Hunter. It's a 2020.
Wait, hold that thought.
Okay.
It was the pick that was DeAndre Hunter, but Darius Garland was the pick right after that.
That's right. He went 5th. Hunter went 4th.
So you could argue that was, let's say they wanted to take Garland there just for fun.
I don't know. Do you think they would? He was a clutch guy. So you think the Lakers would have taken him?
Ingram, Lonzo, Darius Garland, and then multiple first-round picks and swaps plus Josh Hart for Davis. It's a lot. I felt like it was too much at the time.
Is on the I know you did. And it was unprotected in a swap in 2023. And then 2024 is unprotected. And they added a David Griffin. I love when these guys, because I would just love to know on the phone when you go, all right, we've got the deal. We're getting these players and we're getting these picks and they're unprotected and I'm throwing in a swap. And oh, by the way, if I don't like the 2024 draft, can I just have it be unprotected the next year?
Right.
And that's what they have. And so, to be fair, though, there was a lot of, do they have enough to get Anthony Davis in comparison to other people when it was happening at the time? Like, I feel like we can't be too revisionist history saying like they got ripped off, because Anthony Davis at his best is a top 5 player in this league. He is no worse than top 10. If you want to push back on my top 5, fine. He's no worse than top 10. He's still not 30. I think he turns 29 this week. Yeah. And it's a mess this season. But to win a title, which is what it's all about, to hand the keys over to an agency for LeBron and have LeBron make like, there's a lot that goes into this that feels gross, and it feels like, holy shit, we're giving up a decade of assets. Like, when you frame it that way, it makes me at least process, wait, is this actually the wrong way to do it? But knowing they already have a title in their back pocket, I can't say they did it wrong. There's plenty of other teams that try to do crazy shit. I mean, think about what the Clippers will have given up and how much they've actually gotten out of Kawhi and Paul George,
right,
and had them both extend and max those guys, and they still don't play.
I'm going to give the listeners the timeline really quick. They win the 2010 title. Next year, they lose to Dallas. They get swept. Phil Jackson leaves. Winter 2011, the CP3 trade gets vetoed, right? That's a big fork in the road for them. It would have been Gasol and Odom and picks, and they get Chris Paul. They trade Odom to Dallas. He goes into a tailspin, so they lose that asset anyway. 2012, lockout season, 41-25. They lose to OKC in round 2. Summer 2012, they trade for Dwight, basically Bynum. That was really the trade for a year of Dwight, who's coming up back surgery. They trade 2 first-round picks for Nash, 2013, and then one that rolls over to 2018. I forgot some of the stuff. They fired Mike Brown after 5 games in the 2012-13 season. 5 games, he's out. Mike D'Antoni comes in. They go 45-37. Kobe blows out his Achilles. They get swept by the Spurs. And then from that point on, 27-55, 21-61, 17-65. 2016, KD doesn't even meet with them. KD wants to leave OKC, wants to go to a big city and have a new situation. He's like, I'm not even meeting with these guys. 2016, Mozgov 4 for 64, Dang 4 for 72, Clarkson 4 for 50. They hire Luke Walton, Kobe retires. 26-56, get the second pick again. Magic and Pelinka take over, and then they put the LeBron plan in motion. So they have to sacrifice Russell and Randall just for the cap space. They think they're getting LeBron and Paul George. Paul George doesn't come. The reason all this is worth it, because I go back to that 2016 when they don't get the KD meeting. That's rock bottom at that point. They have to spend all of the assets they possibly can to get LeBron and to convince him, if you come here, we will do whatever it takes to have a championship team around you, which leads to Davis, which leads to Ingram, Lonzo, the number 4 pick 2019, Josh Hart, 2022 unprotected, 2024 unprotected, pick swaps in 23 and 25. They win the title, but they had to do it because what does it do, Russillo? It restores the credibility of the Lakers, which is the only thing that mattered. But you had to restore the credibility because of how bad you were from 2011 to 2017.
You remember reading all that stuff? Like, that's when Jeannie Buss was interviewed during the game. It was like, anybody that doesn't want to play with Kobe Bryant's a loser. You know?
Right. I left out the 2-year Kobe Bryant, the contract extension for $30 million a year. Remember, they killed their cap space. He was like, this guy's a legend, which, you know, I get it. And it worked out because they got draft picks. But yeah, they rode the Kobe thing for a while.
And it was painfully obvious that other guys didn't want to play with Kobe. They didn't want to play with him. They didn't want to play with him. And then, you know, the reason I brought up that Lakers Kobe contract in the past on my own pod is that their selling point, like, as everybody goes, this is a terrible contractual decision. Why are you doing this? And it's like, because the Lakers take care of their stars, which I think is a great thing to remember when we look at what's going to happen here with the LeBron decision on, you know, LeBron's not sitting there thinking like, what do you think? I'm coming back cheap? Like, that's not going to happen. I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe there's some way to work around it. But when, and I know we're going to talk with Ethan about this later on, I think the question you're asking, so let me ask you the question. Like, was it so bad that you go, we've got to completely pivot away from what we're doing? And if this means we're going to do something that, like, no team would ever say, hey, you know, it'd be awesome. Let's bring in a star and let the agency do whatever they want. Because that's the criticism now as things start coming full circle as they struggle this season, which I still think deserves some pushback. Because if Anthony Davis was right, I'm not even saying the best version of Anthony Davis, but the better version of him that we're used to seeing, this team's still a top 6 team, even with the disastrous Westbrook part of it. And they'd probably be more likely to bench Westbrook if that were the case and let him run the second unit, because I think that's the only value you would ever get out of him, because the guy can still just drive the hole all night long, because he's a terrible space player. But like, do you look at all of that and go, they shouldn't have done this? Because I don't think that's what you're saying. That's not what I'm saying. But it still feels like this deal with the devil's extensive. That's not fair. But it feels like, hey, we're going to do something that we know deep down we really don't want to do because it has been this bad. Like, people were laughing at the organization. The LaMarcus Aldridge thing was like, wait, what?
Right.
He won't meet with the Lakers?
Right. You think back, since 2010, how many coaches do you think the Lakers have had? Actual coaches that they hired and gave multi-year contracts to?
Since
starting with Phil Jackson. So 5 more after Phil Jackson. Mike Brown, Mike D'Antoni, Byron Scott, Luke Walton, Frank Vogel. And Vogel's about to get bounced after this year. They traded their 2013 and 18 picks. They traded their 2015 number 2 pick, Russell. They traded their number 7 2014 pick, Randall. They traded their 2019 number 4 pick in the AD trade. And now they won't have 2 picks and they have swaps for the other ones. It's just an incredible amount of assets just to restore the illusion of your credibility. And I think the only thing I would say about the AD trade which I think they had to do. I think they gave up too much. I'll never understand why Lonzo had to be in it. That was like on top of all the picks, like to put in Ingram, Lonzo, and the number 4 pick. It just seemed like so much at the time. Here's the real problem for them. I thought AD was like a sure thing. You know, like the same way we would think of like Giannis or somebody like that now, right? Or Embiid or Jokic, or this guy we all felt like was one of the 5 to 7 best players in the league, about to hit his prime, right? He was 25 heading into 26. You're getting this guy who the 3 years before the trade was basically 28 and 12 every night. And then you look at the guy in the Lakers the last 3 years, he's 24 and 9. You look at his missed games year by year, 18, 15, 14, 21, 7, 7, 26, 10, 36, 26, and counting. I think the guy they thought they were getting isn't the guy they totally got. And that's more disturbing to me.
Yeah.
Well, that's more disturbing to me than, selling your soul for the title, whatever you're going to say. They thought they were getting this guy who was like Wilt, Shaq, Kareem, and he just hasn't been.
I have to correct something on LaMarcus Aldridge real quick. Now, because it clicked in my head. He did meet.
He did meet with the Lakers. He did.
He did meet, and he didn't really, the quote was he didn't gel with Kobe. And then this is one of the all-time great July free agency tweets. It said, Aldridge was floored in a good way by Houston's analytics on-court projections in their presentation.
Yeah.
Not so with the Lakers.
Yeah.
That was Mike Bresnahan who had that tweet, because I'll never forget that tweet. So as I was thinking about LaMarcus, I'm like, no, the point was that he met. And
he met, he didn't like it. And then KD the next year didn't even bother meeting with him.
Didn't. Okay, so cleaning it up there. All right. Totally with you on AD, but going back, would you not have wanted AD going to the Celtics? You know?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I love the guy.
I just, now he's like in year 10, right? He's been in the playoffs 4 times out of his first 9 years, might not be in the playoffs this year. So you're talking about a guy, first 10 years of his career, who I voted for NBA top 75, who might miss the playoffs 60% of his career so far. And it's just like, you look at the other guys in the league who are really good year after year. Like Giannis is never missing the playoffs if he's healthy. I don't care who's on his team.
Never.
Neither is Jokic. We're finding out this year with Jokic, like, it literally doesn't matter who's on his team. He's going to go 48 and 34. You just give him 4 guys. He's fine. Same thing for Luka.
He's unbelievable. I know.
Luka's going to go 47 and 35, 49 and 33 every year if he's healthy. And I thought Davis was like that, and he cannot stay on the court. And sometimes it's bad luck, but then other times, like, I thought he came in too heavy this year. I didn't really love the way he played, leading up to the injury this year in general. And you'd think, like, this is a guy who's supposed to be at his absolute prime. And I don't know, would you put him in the top 10 players anymore? Because I wouldn't. I think durability has to be a piece of that.
No, I can't.
You can't.
Yeah, no, at this point, you can't. Even though if I think the right version of him, which I still think is kind of why, like, how come this didn't work, or how come they didn't do this? And you're like, okay, but if AD were there and it wasn't this bad version of him, you're still talking about a team that, maybe having a chance feels aggressive. But who knows? I mean, who knows who has a chance right now? You don't know with Phoenix. And Phoenix, for the first 4 months of the season, I'm like, are we not really acknowledging how steady this team is, and that they're better, and that they have a better frontline option after, really missing out on having depth there last year? Like, I felt like Phoenix, because they blew the lead in the finals last year to Milwaukee, which took an all-century effort from Giannis to have it happen, that I almost felt like, oh, here we go. Like, the people just tempering their expectations with them, when it felt like they were kind of clearly the steadiest of the whole time. And so now you can't pencil them in. Same thing with Golden State. We'll see what happens with Ja when there's actual real expectations. I don't think Ja is going to be afraid of anything, by the way. But it's still a younger group. History isn't necessarily on those teams' side. People aren't going to like Utah in the playoffs. Dallas and Denver might be a little bit easier to defend as you move along because of the one, so even if AD, my point is this, is I'm not saying the Lakers have been a 1 seed if AD is right, because the Westbrook part has been so disastrous. I still think if those two guys have been healthy, you can't completely write them off. And which is what I think people are kind of doing now, where you're like, well, wait, the guy doesn't even play, and you're acting like he's out there, and this is the product.